All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the last day and the last session of our 7th Virtual Training Institute. My name is Echo Salisbury, and I'm from the Department of Labor in Maryland. Just a few quick reminders. Please feel free to utilize the chat and Q&A for any comments or questions you may have. Just please remember to select your audience as everyone so that we may all benefit from your remarks. There will be a quick session evaluation that will pop up at the end of our session, and we ask that you please take the time to provide your feedback. And let's see, while I'm seeing people roll in, I'm going to send out a quick poll just to see what your role is at your various institutions. So that'll be up for a couple of seconds. So I see people already responding. Good. I give you about 6 more seconds. 4, 3, go ahead and yep, here we go. 2, 1, and I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Here we go. So we can see we've got a couple of program administrators, some instructional specialists, a lot of instructors, and even a transition specialist, and a couple of others. So I'm glad that you're all here. Now that we have a pretty good idea about who's in the audience, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Professor Golden. She will be leading us through her presentation entitled Productivity versus Activity. And here we go. So take it away, Professor Golden.
Welcome, everyone. And let me begin by sharing my screen with you. As Echo said, today's presentation, and it's the last one. Isn't there a saying they save the best for last? So I'm here to talk to you about productivity versus activity. We all like to think we're productive, and most of the time we're just being active. So we want to talk about that. But first, we have a disclaimer. Our disclaimer is from the Maryland Department of Labor. It says, the content of opinions expressed in this presentation do not necessarily reflect or present the views, positions, or policies of the Maryland Department of Labor, nor does the mention of trade names, commercial products, or organizations imply an official endorsement by the Maryland Department of Labor. And it also says down here in the little black box, these materials may not be reproduced without the department's written permission. For funding details, you can see the link provided below. Let's get started. We only have 30 minutes. For those of you who didn't meet me in a previous presentation, and for those of you who've already heard all this, I'm sorry. Here he goes again. Brief introduction to me, Professor Golden. My students nicknamed me a long time ago, Professor G. And I have a Southern accent, so let's get that out of the way so that people can focus on my content and not my accent. I have found too many Americans sit and try to figure out what part of the South is she from. So let's get that out of the way. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, home of Elvis Presley. My mother actually went to school with Elvis Presley. Some good stories there I can tell you later. I currently live in California, out next to the Sequoia National Forest, some of the oldest, most beautiful trees in this country. Other than the redwoods, which are further up north, we have the sequoias here with us. I am an associate professor of psychology. I've been teaching for over 25 years. I provide this brief intro because I feel like, because I am a psychologist, why should people listen to me? So that's one of the reasons I do the little intro, is to show you that I have some experience. One thing I didn't list on here, I am currently teaching adult ESL students through Howard County Library System. But of the many jobs I've had in the past, one of the things was an efficiency expert. I loved that. They would hire me to come in, and I would usually start with the owner, president, CEO, start at the top and say, let me follow you around for the day, see what you're doing, see how I can make you more efficient. I loved doing that. So I kind of like this topic. It's kind of near and dear to my heart. Let's start with some definitions. I'm going to open the chat window, and I like to keep it. Oh, yes. I see Echo, great assistant, has already put the handout in the chat window. So even if you're not hitting the chat window, you might want to hit it to download the handout. I'm the type person that takes notes, everything I go to, but I like to give you a handout. So the only notes you have to take is something I say, but it's not on the screen. If it's on the screen, it's in the handout so that you have a handout afterwards. So let's start with our definitions of the words activity and productivity. Sadly, these words are often used interchangeably, like they're the same word. And yet, they are not by any means the same word. Activity refers to, and there's a couple different definitions. I'll give you some of the ones that I've found, and I'll give you the one that stays in my head. Activity is the amount of work that's being done. So being or just looking busy is another way to think of activity. Because, people who look busy, you can say they're very active. Are they productive? Productivity refers to the effectiveness of that work in achieving a specific goal. It used to be being productive is getting the right things done. It's very different from just being busy. When jobs were, and there still are plenty of jobs that are piecework, that you go to a factory and you need to build this number of products in a certain amount of time. It's easy to measure productivity. When you work in a academic setting, an office setting, or something like that, sometimes it's a little harder because did you actually produce something? So that's the question. Those are the definitions I keep in my head. Was I active today? I love designing websites. And so if somebody says, "Oh, I need you to work on my website," I'm like, "Oh, yes, I love doing that." But, at the end of the day, there are activities that I do that end up producing nothing. So I was active, I was busy all day, but I didn't produce anything. So I always say at the end of the day, did I produce something? Whether it's a lesson plan, whether it's a presentation or something, did I produce something? But we'll talk more about that. Don't be too hard with my definitions just yet. So how do you measure up? Success is knowing the difference between activity and productivity. Activity usually comes before productivity, but not all activity is productivity. That's why those words are not interchangeable. Only measured and analyzed activity actually generates productivity. If you can't measure it and analyze it, it's probably not going to lead to productivity. It's probably busy work. And we're going to talk about what different things are that are busy work, what things that waste time. But let's start off now with a quick poll in the chat window. How would you label yourself? You can put a B or a P, or maybe a B/P. I'm busy, but I'm productive too. What do you think you are most of the time? Are you a busy person or a productive person? B, a lot of B/Ps, P and B, productivity. Excellent. So here's your checklist. This is going to be your checklist. Let's see which category you fall into according to this list. So I'm going to compare busy people with productive people. Busy people care about quantity. Oh, they can talk to you all day long and waste your time about how many hours they spent doing this and blah, 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 blah. They care about quantity, whereas productive people care about quality. Busy people are not big on planning. They just kind of roll with, they tend to react. A couple of words I hope you take home from this presentation: react or reflect. Those two different verbs make a big difference. So busy people, not big on planning. They just are reacting. This is coming in, I need to deal with it. This is coming in, I need to deal with it, right? Just busy dealing with things. Whereas productive people are meticulous planners. They plan, they organize, they don't waste time because they know what they need to be focused on. Busy people will judge you by the hours you spend doing something. Productive people judge you by the end result. What did you produce? Busy people love to talk about how busy they are. When I was in graduate school, we would get together and we would all talk about, oh, I don't really have time to be hanging out. I've got 10 journal articles I need to read. I got to do all this. And then finally, one time I said, hang on, let's all agree that we're all busy. We all have stuff we need to be doing, and let's stop wasting time talking about it. Let's just hang out for a few minutes and we'll just acknowledge we're all busy. We don't need to talk about it. Productive people let their results do the talking for them. Busy people are best suited for mechanical jobs. Productive people are meant for creative jobs. Busy people feel productive. I got to tell you, as a psychologist, I'm a social psychologist too. So the person in a social setting, that's my specialty. So people who feel productive are like people who feel safe because they do certain things that often don't make them safer at all. We have programs that we put money into and we think, oh, this is going to save our kids. We're going to start this program. This is going to help them. And then science says, actually, this program has no effect at all, except it makes people feel a certain way. So you can feel productive all day long, but if you're not productive, it's not going to help you. Productive people are productive. Busy people have several priorities. Productive people have only a few priorities. So they know what to focus on. It's all about focus, staying focused. Busy people are hard workers. And by the way, it's nice to have a mix of those two sometimes. Productive people are smart workers. We've heard that expression for a long time. It became very popular probably back in the 80s. Be a smart worker, work smart, not hard, that kind of thing. But a lot of people didn't know how to do it. So hopefully today I can give you a few tips on how to actually do that. Activity does not equal productivity. This is a commonly held misconception. The misconception is that they do equal each other. That is not the case, and I can tell you, I have gone into so many different organizations. They were doing pretty good. They were functioning okay. They were, C, B. You can tell I'm a college professor, always talking grades. C, B, performance. But I said, how would you like to be at A level? Why don't we focus on changing just a few things? Too often, again, those who think activity is the same as productivity, they're focused on getting things done. And that's an old-fashioned attitude. And in some places, it's a good thing. But if you're trying to be productive, just getting things done is not really the attitude that we want. You need to ask, is this activity I'm doing actually going to build the future of the organization? Or am I just busy for the sake of being busy? That happens way too much. You can go into any organization, any corporation, and you can cut some of those busy activities that are not productive out instantly. I'm going to show you how to do that. Why do we get caught up? I'm a psychologist. I have to admit, why is my favorite question in the world. Why do we get caught up in the frantic pursuit of activity? And the reason I have this word in yellow, remember I told you, there's two words I want you to focus on from this presentation: reacting versus reflecting. When we get caught up in frantic behavior, we are just reacting. This came up, I need to deal with it. This came up, I need to deal with it, right? We're just reacting to the moment, which is not a good thing. Because we're taking on tasks without considering how important they are. I mean, where should this be on our list of priorities? How important is it? Does it further the goals of the organization? And some people, really dislike that I bring up meetings. That is one of the things I hate the most because they're such a waste of time. They don't have to be, just sadly, they usually are. Sitting in meetings all day long, writing and responding to hundreds of emails, staying up late every day, that's frantic activity. Is it truly productive? Managers get distracted. They end up spending their time and energy on things that are unproductive because they're just reacting. They're not reflecting and planning. Managers are doing that. Employees tend to follow suit. Caught up. Let's look busy, right? People tend to drift from activity to activity without thinking how these activities contribute to the vision of the organization. It really needs to start from the top down. So some of the consequences of a chronic state of busyness. Busyness is unintended consequences. Activity does not yield productivity. So they're busy being active, but they can't show anything for it. Creativity is stifled. There is no time or energy for the pursuit of ingenuity and excellence. Most important, and here's the other word I was telling you about, we have reflect or we can, react or we can reflect. The most important is this is the consequences of just being busy. We have the inability to reflect on our decisions and our actions. This results in a reactionary state, not just for the managers, from the employees. Everybody's just reacting. We need to be reflecting more. When you're unable to reflect on responses to changes in the workplace, we become unable to learn from our actions. We don't grow as a leader. We don't inspire our employees. We're unable to initiate innovative ways of working. We're too busy reacting. If you want to use creativity and think of new ways and different ways that you can truly be productive, you got to have some time to reflect on that. So let's look at some ways to break this cycle because we need to. It's an easy mindset to fall into, particularly with society's tendency toward busyness. We need to work smarter, not harder. We need to demonstrate results through strategic thinking. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Prior to jumping into an activity, you should ask yourself these two questions. Every manager, every employee, everybody. Two questions, very simple. Why are we doing this? Again, I have to admit, I'm a psychologist, love those why questions. Why are we doing this? My mother hated I did this as a child. Why? But why? You got to give me a good reason or I'm not going to do it. And how will this make a difference to the organization? Those two questions. Everything that you do at work, you should be asking, why are we doing this? Unless you have a good manager and they told you why you're doing it and how it will make a difference to the organization. That's what a good leader does. So let's practice some strategic thinking. Strategic thinking is things like planning. Remember, a productive person is a meticulous planner. Showing decisiveness, setting goals, welcoming feedback, because you're going to reflect on that and then make a good decision instead of just reacting. You can enable reflection on the reasons behind the activities. You got to be able to answer that question, why? Consider the importance. I'm going to show you a great way to sort things. It's really, I love it. Consider the importance of reasons to the goals and the vision of the organization. Empower your team to ask these questions daily. Why are we doing this? How will this make a difference to the future of the organization? If you're not able to answer those two questions about whatever this item is on your to-do list, get rid of it. Shouldn't be on the list. Devote time and energy to activities that will make a future positive effect for your organization. Now I'm going to show you a tool that can help you do that. Our 34th president of the United States was considered one of the most productive presidents and individuals. Not just while he was president, Dwight Eisenhower was known for being an incredibly productive individual. This was his decision box that he used. It's an amazing tool. Thank you. She's pointing to it for us. The Eisenhower box. So you see at the top, you either decide this takes reflection. You can't do this just reacting. Is it urgent or is it not urgent? Is it important or is it not important? So if it's urgent and important, do it. Do it now. Top of your list for today. This is what you need to be focusing on, not other stuff that comes in. If it's not urgent, but yet it's important, schedule a time for it. Okay. It's important, but it's not urgent. I'll schedule a time for that. If it's urgent, but it's not important, then delegate it. That's a big one. Learn to delegate. If it's not urgent and it's not important, get rid of it. And by the way, you don't have to use this just at work. You can use this in your daily life. It's a great decision box. I love this. Great decision tool. Thank you, President Eisenhower. Let's talk quickly about a few time wasters. I love to chat. Echo can tell you, just coming in a few minutes ahead of time before the thing, oh, we're just having the best time. So I love to chat. But when I'm working, I'm working. Because if I'm chatting on work time, just chatting, it's not related to work, I'm actually stealing money from the company. That's how I look at it. Whoever's paying me, they didn't pay me to chat. So while I love to chat, I tend to say, hey, this is awesome. I'd love to talk to you. Let's go to lunch together today. We'll chat for the whole hour we're at lunch or whatever. But just chatting in the workplace, boy, it's a time waster. Disorganization. I don't care what people say. I have friends and coworkers whose desk is a disaster and they think that I work just fine. I can work in this clutter. I can work. I'm sorry. There are just too many studies that show you don't function as well. So disorganization, that's a time waster. You should be able to put your hands on something immediately. When you have to stop and look and hunt, you're wasting time. How about proving you're working? That's a challenging one. And this has come up a lot, pandemic. I've worked at home since the 80s, believe it or not, where I called up over a phone line to work at home. Too often people working at home feel like they have to prove they're working. So they do a lot of busy work just to make you think they're staying busy. About 1/3 of remote employees feel more pressure to be more visible to their managers. Somebody in the chat box said, I've used that chart. I didn't know it was from Eisenhower. It's called the Eisenhower box. So this idea that we have to put on this show, productivity theater, it's called, where you show, oh, I'm working long hours and I've sent so many emails and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but were you productive? I have had wonderful supervisors and bosses and managers in my life that knew to just let me work and I'm super productive. That's why I was able to work from home since the 80s. This culture of constant monitoring people who are working at home can be very destructive and counterproductive. We don't want that. And here's my favorite one. Unnecessary meetings. So hopefully this quick training session will be productive for you. You'll actually leave with knowledge and information you didn't have before that you can apply and make your life better and everyone you work with better. 70% of all meetings, 7 out of 10 meetings, keep employees from working on the tasks they need to be working on. It stops their progress. And then they also found that most employees spend at least 4 hours of work just writing up status updates for the meetings. So I had an opportunity recently to meet with a lady and I started off, hey, I think meetings are a waste of time. Can we just do this by email? She's like, I'd prefer to meet. And I met with her and I was so impressed because we were productive. That was a good meeting. It's rare. Social media, other online distractions. It's amazing nowadays that we have so much social media that people, when they're even sitting at their desk working, they can't put their phone too far away. They seem to have it. Yeah, need to put the social media aside. Checking our emails. That can be a distraction because you're reacting. So you need to cut that down. By the way, multitasking sounds great. I've used it most of my life. If you're multitasking, what that really means is you're not focusing on one task and getting it done well. Those of us who think, oh, we're great multitaskers, yes, but you need to read some of the studies on multitasking. It really means you're not focusing on one thing. Learn to delegate. Don't take other coworkers' task on. That's one of my guilty ones. Micromanaging employees. One, nobody likes to be micromanaged. It's a waste of your time. Not organizing tasks ahead of time and busy work. Oh. So, in conclusion, activity and productivity are not the same. Activity refers to the amount of work, productivity refers to the effectiveness of work. To increase productivity, you need to focus on goals directly related to focus on activities directly related to achieving specific goals. Set clear targets. And that also helps everybody who works with you, under you, even above you. Create a plan, work your plan, regularly review your process, reflecting, not reacting. Identify and eliminate time-wasting activities. Speaking of time, my time is up. We have a few minutes left. Can you please share 70% of the yes, yes. Trust me, I've been arguing with people about let's get rid of those meetings that are a waste of time. By the way, I have had companies I've worked with that I reduce their meetings to maybe once a month, and they were meeting weekly. There's ways to do that. So happy to do that. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? We have just a minute or two left. Any specific questions? Yes, I am available to come in and make you more efficient. Just contact me. My email address is there. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. And I see Echo's lovely face ready to start over.
That was wonderful. I know I'm going to be using the Eisenhower box in my future. So thank you for sharing that. Oh, it looks like is
We had
not
a
some activity is requited
yes,
to be okay, productivity.
great.
Still not understanding the definition of activity.
That's a great question. The definition of activity is just doing stuff, whether it produces any results or not, just being busy and doing stuff. Sometimes one of the slides said you need activity up to being productive. Sometimes you will do some activity that will lead to productivity. Spend some time reflecting on that and just make sure you're not doing busy work. Hopefully that answered your question. Great question, by the way. These will be recorded. Echo, did you see the question about the recording? These are recorded. You can answer that.
Yeah, this recording, they will all be uploaded on our YouTube channel at a later date, but it will be available. And same with if you're wondering about proof of participation, that will be sent via Zoom. But this webinar will be recorded later and you'll be able to access it then. The time is now 4:29. And if there are no more questions, then it looks like that concludes our session with not only Professor Golden, but that concludes all of our Virtual Training Institute. Again, ended with the best, right? We hope that everyone enjoyed your time with us and that we'll see you again at VTI in the future. Please remember to fill out the quick evaluation that will pop up after this session is closed. And other than that, I would like to thank everyone for coming. Thank you, Professor Golden. That was wonderful.
Thank you. I enjoyed doing it. It was the whole week has been wonderful.
It has. Thank you for that.
Have a great
All
weekend,
right.
everyone.
Yep. Have a great evening, everyone, or wherever you are. Have a great day too.
Bye.